Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wired for Logic. I've got my guest today, Robert Forté. He's with Forte Tax Law. He's been doing it for about 15 years. Robert, could you share a little bit more with us about what you guys do and how you help people?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be on with you, Wes. And about myself, so owner of Forte Tax Law, where we do IRS tax resolution work. And so my clients have IRS issues. I represent both individuals and businesses in trying to resolve their past due IRS issues. I also, as an attorney, I also do criminal tax cases as well. So if someone's been indicted by DOJ on a tax matter, our office is equipped to handle that as well.
Yikes, that sounds serious.
Yeah, it is. I have a case right now where I just had a client who was going through criminal investigation division. And so they just last week referred him for prosecution over to the DOJ. So we get to see if that ends up in court now.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
IRS is not somebody, or DOJ is not somebody you want to be on their radar, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
So, what are you typically able to do for clients in those situations like that?
In a criminal matter or civil?
In either, if you want to take one at a time.
Sure. So in the civil cases, obviously, what we're normally trying to do is reach some resolution to satisfy the IRS to either pay the tax debt, which could be through an installment agreement. Normally, that's going to be accompanied with some type of penalty abatement because, in these IRS tax cases, the penalties themselves can be literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the IRS does, in certain circumstances, allow you to request that those penalties be abated or removed. So we're either trying to set up an installment agreement and reduce the penalty, so we reduce the overall liability. Or in some cases, if you qualify for what's known as the offer and compromise program, we negotiate with the IRS to settle the debt for a certain sum. But you have to qualify. Not everyone qualifies for that. But if you do qualify, you can get some really good results with that in certain cases. If everything kind of lines up right, you can wipe out a lot of debt, tax debt, which includes not only the taxes, but penalties and interest as well. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. So for all of our cases, the first thing we do is run those cases through the software that we use and do the analysis that we do to try to see if we can qualify them for an offer, because that's generally going to be the best outcome. If they don't qualify for an offer and compromise, then there's also a partial pay installment agreement where you pay less than you owe, but it's being paid out over time. And if you don't qualify for those two, then what we look at is the installment agreement along with some type of penalty abatement. And we do other things like lien releases, levy releases, things like that. But the primary, I guess, focus of our practice are installment agreements and offers and compromise.
Cool.
And then on the criminal side, of course, if you do, and it's rare. I don't handle a lot of cases because honestly, the DOJ only takes a fraction of the cases that are referred to it for criminal cases. Only takes a fraction of those actually to court just based on, their ability, manpower, especially now things are kind of crazy with the IRS, but they are still litigating those cases. So in the criminal case, what we do is honestly, try to keep our clients out of federal prison. So I had a case a couple of years ago, a criminal case where my client was initially facing up to 18 years in federal prison. We ended up going to trial on that and ended up getting her probation. Thankfully, kept her out of jail. And like I said, now I have another criminal case that I'm working on that's just been referred. So I don't know what they're looking at on that one. It's still being assessed by the DOJ. But if they do proceed with litigation, then obviously the goal is to see if we can keep our client from having to go to jail.
Yeesh, that's a scary prospect.
Yeah, exactly.
What got you into doing this type of law in the first place? I know there's a lot of different kinds of attorneys. You have like your Jim Adlers out there, tough, smart lawyers jumping on top of 18-wheelers and whatnot. And then you have your tax law. So what got you into tax law? Why did you want to do that in the first place?
You know what? That's a great question because I do not have a tax background. I don't have an accounting background. I went to law school like a lot of guys go to law school because we're just really not good in math. I was an English major and I was trying my best to avoid math at all costs. So I went into law initially. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't know any lawyers when I was growing up. My senior, I think I was in high school, maybe my sophomore, junior year in high school, something like that. I don't even know how I got into this, but I had an opportunity to go through some program where they kind of pair you up with a professional. You kind of follow them throughout the day and mirror them. And for some reason I said, I wanted to get paired up with a lawyer because at that time I was young and pretty, I don't know, kind of money motivated, I guess, or materialistic. How I don't know, and why I don't know. I didn't get that from my parents, certainly, as they often tell me. But they paired me up with a lawyer, and I got to go to his office and kind of just see him go through the process, kind of what a workday was like. And I just thought it was pretty cool. But the other part of that was I always wanted to work for myself. So that was the real attraction to going to law school, because I knew I could
Yep.
go to law school, set up my own shop, be my own boss. So that was kind of the main issue for me, the main thing for me. So went through college, went through law school, came out and immediately went into private practice, which was the goal. As a matter of fact, I got licensed on a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, and I was in court in a trial that Friday, which was kind of crazy. So yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, I was in trial Friday. I did not know I was in trial Friday. I thought it was a hearing. It was actually my wife, and she had been sued over a non-compete agreement. And she's like, "Hey, can you go to court with me on this thing Friday? I think the judge just wants to talk to them about something." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll just show up." Thinking I'm just going in for a hearing. We
Yeah.
get there, and the judge is like, "You guys ready for trial?" And I'm like, "What?" So anyway, so yeah, that was kind of how I got into it, and actually won that case, by the way. But anyway,
Excellent.
yeah, so I just kind of started off doing a little bit of everything. I was doing what we refer to as door law. Whatever came into the door, you took it. It could be family
Yeah.
law, business related, wills in the states, whatever it was. You just kind of go figure it out and get it done. And I realized after doing that for a while that that was probably not the best use of my time and energies. And so I really wanted to try to niche down into something. And I used to get these letters in the mail pretty much on a weekly basis. And it was from a CPA in Florida. And he had a business, if you would, where he taught attorneys how to get into IRS resolution work. Honestly, I would never even open the letter. So I was like, I don't have an accounting background, a tax background. That's not something that, I think I'd be really interested in. And one day, not having a great day in the office, I think like a client didn't pay or something like that. And I happened to get that letter that day, came into the office, and I opened it. And the program was basically, you pay for this program, but a money back guarantee. If it didn't work for you, if you wanted to get out of it, you get all your money back. So I said, I'll give it a shot. And this was 2005, somewhere in there, and got into it and just really enjoyed the work. It was very different from what I had been doing, of course. At that time, I wasn't having to go to court and, dealing with the scheduling issues. So, really just enjoyed it and like the clients that I was getting and working with and helping people, solve their tax problems. So that's how I got into it, through that CPA in Florida, just through that program that he had.
Nice. And I guess, was there any sort of like determination of I like law better than, or I like tax law better than, because I know it's difficult. It's kind of like in IT. You have people that specialize in cybersecurity, so you have like your MSSPs, but they don't necessarily do managed services for, like, in a traditional sense like we do. Like, we
Hmm.
do the support of the computer. So like if your computer stops working, like, oh, my computer won't boot up, or oh, I can't get on the internet, you don't call a cybersecurity guy unless
Right.
you got hacked. If you got hacked, well, that's a different story. Then you get the cybersecurity guy involved. But they're almost like different types of practices. Was there something in particular that drew you to tax law? I mean, besides obviously getting the thing in the mail, and it sounds like you liked some of the clients you were getting.
Yeah, you know what? I think at that time, at least initially when I first started doing it, it was just I knew what I was doing. Because there was a whole program laid out in terms of here's how you handle an IRS case. And so I had mentoring, I had training. It was a kind of a coaching network to where if I had a question, I could pick up the phone and call in and say, "Hey guys, here's what I'm dealing with this case," and
Right.
they would give you support, which is unlike me doing any other thing in private practice. I had some good mentors, some guys I had clerked with during law school that I could always reach out to if I had a question, but they didn't necessarily practice in the areas that I was taking before I was doing the tax law. So there was a lot of, hey, I got to go figure this out on my own, which was a lot of time invested in it. A lot of time back in those days, a lot of time out of the office going to the library, a lot of time in court. I was working 7 days a week. Whereas with the tax resolution work, it was different. I mean, it was kind of a 9 to 5. If I had questions, like I said, I had a built-in network that I could call and say, "Here's what I'm dealing with," and they'll give you a response right then on the spot. So I think
Wow.
that kind of support system really really helped me kind of find my lane there doing the tax law, which was very different from things I was doing before, where I was having to spend a lot of time doing research, and trying to learn new cases, new areas of law based on what was coming in the door, which just wasn't the best way. So it was nice to just say, hey, when people say, what kind of law do you do? I do tax work. I do IRS tax resolution, as opposed to I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and just having that one area, this is my practice area.
Right.
That was great. That was so different from what I had been doing up to that point.
Definitely an area of expertise. Yeah.
Right.
So, what in all the many many years that you've been doing this, can you share a story? Names have been obscured to protect the innocent, and you were really able to get like this amazing resolution for a client, and then um, you know, maybe share one that you're not so happy about the outcome, but you tried or something. Like these are
Definitely. So probably I'd have to go back to that first criminal case because that was my first criminal tax case that I had ever taken. So I prior to doing the tax resolution work, I had done a little criminal work, but it was minor stuff, nothing major. And so didn't have a great familiarity with criminal law, especially criminal tax law. So this person that contacted my client on that first case had contacted me. They had already been indicted. And so we kind of started the process from there, where there's already been an indictment, it's already scheduled for court. And I don't know if you know about DOJ cases, but generally speaking, and it's the reputation has changed a little bit over the last, few years here. But prior to that, the DOJ, their thing was, I think their conviction rate and court was what, 90+%. I mean, if they took a case to court, they were going to win because they only took cases they knew they could win, and especially in IRS tax cases, because not an awful lot of gray area. You either paid the taxes or you didn't. You either, willfully did not pay the taxes, or you did pay them. So there's not a lot of wiggle room though. So when I got that first criminal case, again, I reached out to some people that I had some connections with, who had done some criminal work in the past. And they were saying, listen, these are tough cases, kind of brace your client and let them know there's a real high likelihood that they're going to spend some time in jail. So we had that discussion. And as a matter of fact, my client, the day we went to court, she had told her family to be prepared that she was most likely going to leave the courthouse and go to jail. Okay. Because this is DOJ. They just generally win those cases. So to, kind of be fighting with the DOJ in court, and to get her probation was phenomenal for me. Even the person that I was kind of talking to, the attorney that I was talking to about the case, kind of mentoring me through the process, was just shocked, especially for my first criminal case. So to get that result, and that was so much better for me because in the other cases, yeah, there's been other cases on the civil side where you get really good outcomes for your client, but ultimately, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but you're just dealing with money. Whereas this case, you were dealing with someone's liberty. If we lose this case, this person's going to jail. Okay. And I don't know. I think the DOJ at that time, initially, I think they were looking at 18 years. We had worked out an arrangement to where she could get no more than 3 years, but still 3 years in jail. So to get her probation and she not have to serve a day in jail, that's probably my proudest accomplishment in tax law. On the civil side, one thing I really enjoy about doing the tax law, especially a few years back, and I'll explain that in a moment, is that I'm amazed how a lot of clients, not all of them, but how really fearful people are of the IRS. And going back to your previous question, that's one thing that I really like about doing the tax resolution work. It's not so much the work itself, it's dealing with clients who are coming in, they're scared, they're fearful. You hear these horror stories about what the IRS can do, which is, send you to jail and take all your assets, make you sell your home and sell your vehicles and all this stuff. And a lot of that's true. I mean, they have the ability to do those things. It's the federal government, kind of do what they want to do. But these clients come in and they're fearful, they're scared, they're not sleeping. There are other problems related to the tax issues. There's problems, family problems, and marital issues, and just a lot of problems that come about as dealing with that
that
stress.
compound on each other.
Exactly. Just the unknown of, what's going to happen. Am I going to wake up tomorrow and the IRS is trying to take my house from me, or the IRS is trying to put me in jail? So really being able to kind of, I guess, serve more as a counselor than an attorney in those cases, and really try to get people to understand, listen, we're going to help you with this. We're going to walk you through this process. We'll be here for you. We'll explain everything. And one thing I've noticed, so one of the process is if we get a new client, we have to send in a power of attorney to the IRS. And that's just the power of attorney is just establishing that I have the authority through the IRS to represent this client, and the IRS can share that, personal confidential information with me. But the other thing the POA does is at that point, the IRS can have no direct contact with our clients. They have to go through me because they're represented by an attorney or a POA. So when I explain that to the clients, you can almost just literally see this look of relief that comes, on their face. I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about the. I mean, obviously, the IRS can still send letters in the mail. Most of those letters are computer generated. A revenue officer is not going to show up at your house or at your place of business, and start, grilling you, interrogating you. So everything goes through our office. So you just see people, and I tell clients all this time, even though they never listen, and that's understandable. I tell them one of the reasons you're hiring me, you're retaining me to handle this is so you don't have to worry about the tax issue. That becomes my burden. Let me worry about the tax issue. You get on with your life to the best of your ability to do so. And again, it's not always easy for clients to do, where it may be easier for me to say that, but that's really how I look at it. Like, once we're retained, now it's my problem to solve, and we're going to try to do that to the best of our ability.
Well, it's putting a huge buffer between the IRS and the client. You're able to step in between and run interference. You know how to play the games versus, I mean, you think about like the average person. I mean, yeah, you could pull up Chat GPT and probably do some research
Right.
and figure out what to say to them or what not to say to them. But having an attorney involved in this situation that's on your side, the client, that's a game changer. All of a sudden it levels the playing field. You
Correct.
know how to play the game. That's all you do all day long is try to outmaneuver the IRS and get the best deal as possible for your client. There Yeah, the IRS, just like you said, they do what they want when they want, how they want. And to the average person, when they're in those kind of tax situations where they're on the IRS's radar, that's not some place you want to be. And having someone like you on their side is definitely a step in the right direction and probably provides them a lot of peace of mind.
I hope so. I mean, that's what we try to do. And again, we can't do that in every case because, you still have those clients who, they're just going to worry about it regardless. But, we do try to, like you said, kind of be that kind of protection for them from the
Right.
IRS, or at least that professional, like you said. And having done this as long as I've done it, I know the rules. I know how this game is played. Whereas most of my clients, the vast majority of my clients, I mean, they don't deal with the IRS. I mean, most of the guys I have, especially the business owners, they're really good at what they do. And what they do is run their businesses. That's what they've been trained in. That's what they know how to do. What they don't
Right.
necessarily know how to do is the tax side of their business, or the accounting side of their business, or they've gone through a CPA who didn't do what they were supposed to do, and now the client is kind of paying the consequences of that, and we kind of have to step in and try to see if we can get things corrected for them. But yeah, just being able to try to help our clients not have to deal with that situation on their own, and provide them with some professional guidance and some peace of mind, that's golden.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from some personal experience, saying that I think one of the most important things for a business owner to have is a good CPA that knows what they're doing. Because early on, when, I've had SD Tech for 25, 26 years, and
Mm,
early on, I did a lot of the accounting myself, tried to like, oh yeah, I'll figure it out, and
yeah.
like file taxes and stuff like that. I mean, nowadays you could probably do a lot of that yourself with like Chat GPT, and we'll get into that bit
Sure.
too. But you never want to, when you need an attorney for whatever kind of law, you never want to go cheap with that. You want to hire somebody that's experienced, such as yourself. And same thing with a CPA. You never want to go cheap with that and like, oh, let me get my cousin
Right.
to do my taxes for me, because then you don't do it correctly and you get on the IRS's radar, then they're gonna have to go find somebody like you. They're gonna be like, "Hey, Robert, can you help me? My cousin filed my taxes and they really screwed me up royally, and now
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
IRS needs thousands of dollars." So,
Definitely. I'd say the majority of my clients probably come from that they've had a CPA who was, for whatever reason, didn't get the job done, or they were trying to do their own taxes, and they just really, and they were really trying. They meant well, they're well intentioned. They just didn't know what they were doing, or in a lot of cases, it's, when you run into financial problems in your business, and it's like, hey, I have to pay my employee, or I can pay my employees, or I can pay the IRS, but I can't pay both. So I made the choice to pay my employees to keep the business running or to reinvest in the business. And then, the IRS steps in saying, hey, well, that's your problem. You need to pay your taxes. So it can be a mess. It's just a nightmare dealing with the IRS. And especially now because the delays are just outrageous. I mean, it's always been difficult dealing with the IRS since it's such a large bureaucracy. But now, the delays, we'll contact the IRS on the case. And in response to that, we're going to get a letter saying, well, we got your correspondence and we need 90 days to respond. And in 90 days, they're not going to respond. So it's just now that's the downside to doing the tax resolution work of these cases, which used to, not take quite so long to get resolved. Some of these cases now are literally taking 4 or 5 years to resolve just because so many delays dealing with the IRS waiting for a response, and then all the issues that they're going through with manpower and people leaving. It's just the nightmare right now, but hopefully things will get better sooner rather than later.
Is this all post-COVID or what?
Yes, post-COVID for the most part, because pre-COVID, we weren't having these issues. I mean, yeah, it was the IRS and you still had delays, of course, but not
Right.
like now. Yeah.
That's crazy. 4 or 5 years, man.
Yeah. And these cases used to, that was one of the selling points that the CPA that got me into it used to use, is that, these cases generally resolve within 12 to 18 months. And now that's 24, 48 months, maybe. And I've had cases, some unfortunately now they've lasted even longer than that. And, that's the difficult part when you're trying to deal with your clients and let them know. And so I've even had to work that in my contracts now. Like, look, we have nothing that we can do over regarding these delays. I can't tell you how long this case is going to take. Probably going to take years rather than months to get it resolved,
Yeah.
though. But that's just the state of the IRS these days.
Man, it just seems to me like they need to do something on their end to kind of speed up that resolution. Because if it's taking years, my God, that's not great for anybody. It's not great for the IRS. They're not getting paid.
No.
It's not great for the client, and they're still waiting to like what's going to happen with this whole thing. How do you get your clients? Do you partner with CPAs, or how do you keep those leads coming in the front door?
As you just said it, partnering with CPAs. CPAs are my best referral partners. Well, a few years back, I started kind of networking with some CPAs and just doing the work that I do. Obviously, I met some CPAs because, people would reach out to me if they, found out that I was doing tax resolution work. But now I have a referral letter that I send out every month, and I just send it out to CPAs saying, hey, this is what we do. Because in tax resolution, three entities can do tax resolution work: licensed attorneys, certified public accountants, and what's known as an enrolled agent, who's basically an accountant that gets licensed through an exam that the IRS administers. But a lot of CPAs I've learned don't want to deal with IRS resolution work, even though they can. I guess it's
Right.
like attorneys who can and just prefer not to for various reasons. So a lot of the CPAs, when they have these clients of theirs that have these tax issues, once it goes beyond a certain point, they're looking for somebody to pass those cases off to because they don't want to deal with the nightmares of fighting with the IRS. So by far, my best referral partners are CPAs. And I do get some referrals from tax preparers, enrolled agents, but my primary focus in terms of referrals are networking with CPAs who, have clients who have serious tax issues.
Yeah. Was I we love our CPA. Was I able to connect you with Yoke Tax?
You know what? I don't recall offhand. I don't know if I've talked to them or not. So if I haven't, I certainly love to, establish a relationship with them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
they're great. So, I think I mentioned earlier one of the things that if I could go back and tell my younger self, it'd be get a better accountant. The CPA we were using before, they were just basically taking bank statements and just whatever's on the bank statement. They weren't looking at credit cards, they weren't looking at payments to the credit cards or anything like that. And so we were losing just all kinds of potential deductions. I probably paid,
Mm.
I don't know, $100,000 more in taxes over a 10-year period than I should have. Um, yeah, so it's get a good accountant, and then if you get in trouble with the IRS, find a good tax attorney such as Robert, and
There you
Robert will
go.
will take care of you. But, I'll need to connect you with Dayon and over at Yoke. They're absolutely fantastic. Ever since we got with them, they got all our books straightened out, and they've been able to really get everything from the financial side of the house all straightened out and in order. We really appreciate that. So yeah, any
Absolutely.
CPAs I can connect you with, I'd be happy to do that. We've known each other for a long time, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate everything you've done for us. So
Oh, likewise. Thank you.
yeah. So what do you find? So you send out letters. Do you find that getting those Like email letters, or you're talking about actual mail letters? What are you doing?
Actual mail letter. So going through that coaching network for tax resolution professionals that I was in, and I'm no longer part of that particular group, but back then one of the things they would teach you was, marketing. And
Right.
basically the marketing was send out these referral letters to CPAs, accountants, enrolled agents. And at that time, and this was years back, you would go to the IRS website and just in the little search bar, you type in the P10 list, which was a list of accountants and CPAs, and it would just spit out a list, and you could kind of narrow that down by your state or city or whatever. You could filter it, and so that's what I was doing back then. Now I've kind of revised that to where I actually reach out to a particular type of CPA because I'm trying to attract certain type of clients. But that was kind of it. So it was a physical letter, and as a matter of fact, I just did a new one a couple of weeks ago and just submitted it to the bar, Texas bar, to get it approved because I have to get those types of matters approved through the State Bar Advertising Committee. But also now it's the letter and an email. So if I get a response from a CPA, I'll follow up with an email with them. But that's primarily my main source of marketing right now is just networking with CPAs.
Are you able to do any kind of email marketing, or I don't know what the laws are behind?
Yeah, I actually am. Now, as long as I am sending letters or emailing referral sources. So I can't, with some exception, like if I know of someone who has an IRS problem, I'm not allowed to reach out to them directly. Okay,
Right.
because
That
the
makes
bar
sense.
doesn't allow that, right? But I can reach out to referral partners. So if I just say, "Hey, CPAs, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you have clients who may benefit from our services, we'd love to have a conversation with you or your client." Generally, the state bar is fine with that. But if I'm reaching out to like you, for example, and say, "Hey, Wes, I know you have a business, and if you have IRS tax problems, contact me." The bar, Texas bar is tough when it comes to advertising. They're very
Yep.
restrictive. And so they would not generally approve something like that, even though I can jump up and down on that 18 wheeler and yell and scream. They'll approve that apparently. But if I want to send you a letter saying, "Hey, I'm a tax attorney
Yeah.
and I can help you with your tax problem," the bar says, "No, you can't do that." So I haven't figured that out in
Interesting.
20 years of practicing law.
Yeah, because it seems like to me that's such a good such a good relationship to establish with CPAs, because I know, anytime I've asked, like, prior CPAs, I haven't had to ask Yoke, but prior CPAs we've had, if I've had an IRS issue, hey, who can I talk to help us with IRS problem? It's like they don't know, like, oh, we don't really deal with that. For a client, that sounds weird because, like,
Right.
you file my taxes with the IRS, but if I have a problem with them, you don't deal with that? Doesn't make any sense. So
Exactly. But you know what I've found is that's actually the right way for them to handle that. Because if you're the CPA that got into the jam in the first place, you really don't want to be the one representing the client before the IRS because you're the one who caused the problem in certain cases. So, and that surprised me at first. I was thinking, well, CPAs are going to be doing all this work, but it amazes me. Every time we send out those letters, we're going to get a few calls back from CPAs saying, "Thank you. I got your letter. I've been looking for." Some of those guys tell us, "I've
yeah,
been looking for years to find someone, some attorney that," because there's very few, unlike most, law practice areas, there are very few attorneys that, as far as I can tell, that actually work in IRS tax resolution. Like, as a matter of fact, like here in San Antonio, I know of myself and another guy. That's it, like two of us. And there may be some more that I just don't know of or never heard of. But I actually knew like an attorney from Houston who did IRS resolution who would come down. He had a little office here. There's nobody in the office, but he'd come down here like once or twice a month and kind of, do some consultation. So there's just not a lot of attorneys in this area compared to, other practice areas, personal injury and family law, things of that nature, where it's, an attorney on every corner doing that work. But yeah, there seems to be a real need for CPAs to, establish those relationships with a tax attorney who can kind of take those cases when they get sideways with the IRS.
yeah. So you're saying there's only a couple attorneys in San Antonio that do tax law. So is there not a huge client base looking for that, or there is, but you guys have to just tap into it?
You have to tap into it. As a matter of fact, I read something just a couple of days ago, and if I'm not mistaken, the stats were there are currently like 17 million taxpayers who have issues with the IRS right now, and so there's a lot of people out there with IRS taxes, and that's one thing that really surprised me when I first got into doing tax resolution work. 'Cause back then, I was in BNI, Business Network International, and you go to the meetings and, hey, this is what I do. I do IRS tax work. If you have problems with an IRS issue, I can help you. I was shocked, and I'm still shocked by the number of people I run into who have IRS problems, who owe money and lots of money to the IRS. And so I have clients who literally owe millions of dollars in back taxes to the IRS. And so not everybody I meet, of course, owes that much, but I'm just shocked by how many people I run into that have serious IRS problems. So there's no lack of clients. Not all of them are the right people to work with for various reasons, but yeah,
Right.
there's no shortage of people dealing with IRS problems right now. It's literally tens of millions of people who, that potential client pool.
So are you able to work with clients outside of Texas, or how does that work with, I mean, it's federal. So if you do it in Texas, I would figure you could do it in other states too, right?
You are absolutely correct. And that is one of the things that's very interesting because pretty much to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of any other areas of law where you're not limited to where you're licensed. So I'm licensed in the state of Texas. So with the IRS work, yes, it's federal. So I can take clients from anywhere in the United States for IRS cases. And of course, the majority of my clients are in Texas, but I have over the last I'd say about the last 6 months, kind of been ramping up marketing outside of Texas to
Okay.
bring in more clients outside of state, actually reaching out to CPAs outside of the state of Texas just to kind of broaden that client base.
Yeah. Because that's actually, man, that's such a great referral base. Because if you can, the CPAs are the ones who would actually know whether the clients have an IRS problem or not.
Right.
And then they can go to client XYZ, say, hey, little Johnny, you know how you were freaking out the other day about your IRS problems? Well, I've got your potential solution here. Go talk with Robert, make the connection. Robert steps in, creates that buffer. Robert goes to bat for the client and knocks it out of the park and gets rid of their IRS problems in, like you said, what did you say, 3 to 5 years or something like that?
Yeah, it depends on the nature of their case, but hopefully it won't take that long. But we'll
Yeah, if
let you
I were the
know if we
client,
think
I
it's going to
wouldn't
run
care
longer.
as
Right.
long as it's getting done. It's like IRS isn't hassling me anymore. That's great. I can
Correct.
sleep at night. That's great. Robert's got it under control. That's great. What's your capacity to take on clientele? Like, how many clients can you handle at once? Like, do you have, who else do you have on your staff? Like, how quickly could you grow if you needed to? Like, what does that look like?
Great question. So right now, I have room to take on more clients now. As a matter of fact, I told myself this year the focus is scaling. So really trying to grow the business
Okay.
this year, grow the practice this year. And so that's kind of where we are right now. One thing I've been trying to decide is even though it is federal and I can attract clients or reach out to clients outside of Texas, honestly, I don't really need to because, Texas being as large as it is. And so you have these areas, like, the Houston area. So if I really, my focus in scaling this year is really focusing on CPAs in Houston, Dallas, and Austin. And I've
Right.
made some connections in those areas. So you take those three areas plus San Antonio, yeah, I'm good. So as I scale, what I would do is if I'm starting to bring in more clients, I may need to bring in more staff. But and that's the other thing about this practice area that I like is that the majority of the actual work can be done by administrative staff. The only thing I'm required to do as the attorney is I have to be the one actually on the phone with the IRS. I can't delegate that to staff unless they're licensed attorneys, CPAs, or enrolled agents. So, in that regard, it's good. So I can scale fairly easily. I just want to make sure I'm doing it correctly and not taking on too much at once. But we certainly
Right.
have the room right now to grow in the scale. And like I said, that's the focus for 2026 is just scaling and seeing where we can go. And at some point, I've considered maybe bringing in an attorney, and I would just kind of be responsible for the marketing and kind of running the business as opposed to working in it per se.
Yeah.
But I'm not there, not at that point yet. So right now it's just myself. I have two admins that are working with me. Someone has reached out to me recently about maybe bringing on a virtual assistant. I haven't done that yet. I just don't feel like I need it right now, but something I would consider moving forward if I thought we needed it.
Well, speaking of connections and referrals, if you are ever looking for a virtual assistant, we've got RVA does all the editing for the podcast for us.
Mm,
So she excels at that. So she's a little more technically inclined. But it's freed up a ton of time. I mean, I could sit here all day long and do the podcast, but I wouldn't be able to have the time to edit them. and so
Right.
they literally never get released. Um, if you ever need a connection with that, we've got a great group that we use for the VA called Crucus.
Okay.
He's local here in San Antonio. He's an ex-cop. I met him through speaking of networking events. You need to make it out to our next BPSA networking event. I've been wanting to introduce you to people there, and we do. It's a once a month networking event. It benefits a nonprofit. There's usually
Oh, okay.
anywhere from 100 to 150, sometimes as many as 200 people there, business owners, other people
Oh,
that could help create connections. But yeah, that's all those opportunities are just great. A lot of times, Mark Ebinger, who's the one that owns Crucus, he's there,
mhm.
but he's got a wide variety of very well trained VAs that he has access to. So if and when you get to that point, just reach out to me and I can connect you to Mark, and very reasonable in price. Maybe it's something you could use to help scale where your current admins that you have might be able to delegate some of the simpler, more time consuming tasks to the VA, kind of
Right.
offload that kind of stuff to them, and then they can help with more high level stuff because you've had them for, I guess they've been working for you for a couple of years.
Right. Right. So that's interesting because I've never used a VA before. And so that's something I definitely like to get some more information about. So yeah, because I'm certainly open to looking into that to see if that might be the next step
Sure.
for us.
Sure. I know I follow you on LinkedIn, and part of why I asked you to be on this podcast, I started LogicWire AI back in August of last year, and come up with AI solutions and things like that for companies to help them grow and things of that nature. I saw a bunch of the posts that you've been putting on LinkedIn. A lot of them are very AI centric. Tell me kind of what are some of your thoughts about AI and how it's affecting businesses in general and then yours specifically.
Well, about that time, I don't know. I hadn't been posting on LinkedIn that long. Say of August, as of August of last year, I think so. August, September, somewhere in there. Put up some posts, and some posts went viral, good or bad. So I kind of had the reputation, I guess, of being anti-legal tech on LinkedIn, which is not true. I mean, I wasn't anti-legal tech, and I'm still not. I was just looking at it from a different perspective. Um, in terms of specifically for legal tech, so I don't really, deal with AI outside of the legal tech context. But what I was looking at is it working? In terms of, let me just back up real quick about that. So
Sure.
how I got into that, I was, been practicing law for about 20 years. And at one point I was just looking to do something else. And someone had reached out to me online and asked me if I was interested in writing a book. And so we started talking about writing a book. He owned a publishing company, and I ended up not writing the book, but that got me thinking about some other things. So I started looking at doing some ghostwriting. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of ghostwriting. I was trying to niche down and say, okay, who do I want to do ghostwriting for? And I thought, well, maybe I'll do something related to what I do as an attorney, but also wanted to kind of bring in the tech side of it. So I thought, well, I'll do some, ghostwriting in the legal tech community. So I reached out to a few people, and in doing that, trying to find people to ghostwrite for, I had to do some research. So I, check out their websites and check out their online profiles. And what I found was what I thought in my mind were a lot of big promises for what AI could do currently in
Yep.
law, but that did not seem to match reality based on my conversations with other legal professionals. So I started just posting about that. And the basis, I guess, of my posts were there's a lot of hype, especially in the legal tech marketing. Everything, every little thing that comes out now in AI, it's transformational. It's going to transform your practice and, do this and do that. And the only thing I was hearing was attorneys getting in trouble for using AI improperly or poorly. So that's kind of
Right.
what I was posting about, is kind of more the ethical side of it. Like, I'm not opposed to AI. I think AI is great. I use AI. I use Chat GPT. I don't use it for my practice because I just don't need it for the type of practice area that I'm in. Don't have a problem with any other attorney using it as long as they're doing so responsibly, of course.
Of
But
course.
that's what I was posting about, just kind of the ethical side. And the thing I kept coming back to, and I keep coming back to, is this thought of, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. And to me,
That's
it
true.
just seemed like there was a big rush to push AI into legal areas, where the downside for that, to me, especially in talking to other attorneys who were using AI, was that, at the end of the day, I have to sign my name on that paperwork, right? And so if I'm using AI and it generates some bad information, and I use that bad information, AI or the AI companies, they're not getting called in front of the state bar. They're not having to defend their law license. I am. And you hear these stories, especially if you're in law, of maybe even if you're not in law, about attorneys getting sanctioned, attorneys getting in trouble for just running stuff through Chat GPT or Claude or some other AI LLM, and then just taking that information and putting it in some document and submitting it to the court without verifying that information or confirming that information. So to me, it was like, I don't know if the risk is worth the reward right now. And so that's kind of what I was posting about. Like I said, had some posts go viral, had a lot of really great people, a lot of people a lot smarter than me contacted me to, have some discussions offline about it. And that's been great. So, met a lot of people through that, and haven't been as active on it. Like I said, I was kind of dealing with some sickness during the month of January, but starting to get back into it now. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. AI has such a charged topic from time to time. You get kind of like with politics, and I remember back in the day with politics, you could have conversations with people and you could present your view, and it could be different than somebody else's view, and you guys could still have a constructive conversation about it. It wasn't just
Right.
seems like nowadays, like as soon as you mention a topic, it immediately splits the crowd 50-50, and you're
Yep.
either completely for it or completely against it. And there's no in
Right.
between. And no one on one side or the other wants to listen to the other one's argument. It's just like, so kind of like with AI, mentioned, oh, AI in law, and everyone's like, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread. And then the other person's like, oh, it's a horrible idea.
Right.
Why are you talking about AI? And so, yeah, it's interesting. But I think, when used responsibly, and then there's even other areas in the practice that even if it wasn't applied specifically to the legal aspect of, like, reviewing a contract or
Mhm.
preparing a document, maybe it's used for, client acquisition, or maybe it's used for follow-ups, or maybe it's used for something that's outside of, because you have to be, just like you're a subject matter expert in tax law specifically. Like if I asked you to maybe do a will for me on including my multiple businesses and all that stuff, that starts to get really complicated. You might not have the law knowledge to do that.
Right.
But if I brought you a tax issue and said, hey, I'm getting calls from the IRS or emails from the IRS, or I guess they don't send emails really, they send you letters, getting letters from the IRS, Robert, please help me. You can handle that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. It can be applied selectively to portions of your business. It doesn't have to be applied across the board, and there's smart ways to use it. And I'll give you a great example. This is perfect. This morning, um, I've been using computers, been providing IT support for, like I said, 25 plus years. I was doing it in
Mhm.
high school, probably closer to 30 years now at this point. But you can't know everything about everything, and knowing when to use AI and where to use AI, and also how you prompt it too, because it's not just about like, oh,
Yes.
hey, I was having an issue with my I've got a brand new Surface laptop 7, and it just recently started, just randomly out of nowhere, just started rebooting. You type in an email in Outlook, and it would just do I used to call it the blue screen of death. It used to be the blue screen and give you the
Mhm.
stop code. Now it's like the black screen of death, and it starts doing the
Right.
memory dump. There's no rhyme or reason as to what's happening. I feel like I use my computer for less types of things nowadays than I did back in the day. Like now it's just basically web browser and email,
Right.
and nothing really beyond that. And here I am typing an email, and the thing just reboots. And it's like, okay. And so I log back. It's quick, right? So it reboots quickly, and I'm back in. And it's done it so much recently. It got to be such an annoyance. This morning was like the last straw. And I'm like, I'm sick and tired of dealing with this. I've got to get to the bottom of this issue because it's just driving me nuts. So it dawned on me, I'm like, half the time I forget about Chat GPT, because I feel like a lot of people use it as a crutch
Right.
instead of using it for the right reasons. So
Exactly.
this morning was a great example. So I take the memory dump. I'm not a programmer, and I know there's a tool somewhere that you can download, I think probably from like Microsoft, and it can analyze the memory dump. But I thought, you know what? So I prompt ChatGPT, hey, you're a level 3 network engineer working at a managed IT
Mhm.
company called SC Tech. You have a client that has an issue with their laptop. It's a Microsoft, Surface laptop 7 for business, blah, blah, blah. Because you got to be very specific, just like if you would instruct a person, pretend you're telling ChatGPT how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. How would you tell a person that's never made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich how to make it to where you could be blindfolded, giving them instructions, and when you took the blindfold off, you'd see a perfectly made peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Like, you got to go into that level of detail if you want that
Exactly.
kind of result from it. So I'm sitting there telling it, network admin, blah, blah, blah. Computer's rebooting randomly. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. It just stop code. I've got the memory dumps. Are you able to read memory dumps? And it says, yeah, if you upload it, I can read it. Okay, great. Here's the memory dump. It just did it this morning. I want you to do some deep thinking and deep analysis on this memory dump and come back with a few ideas of what it possibly could be. And I'll tell you, I was getting this reboot every 30 minutes to an hour. The last time I did was this morning after I applied the fix that it suggested. So it says it looks like this issue, based on the memory dump, it drove down deep into that memory dump, and it said it looks like it may be tied to, in these newer computers, you have what's called an NPU, a neural processing unit. So it kind of augments what the CPU and the GPU are used for. CPU, normal computations, GPU, more for
Right.
like graphics and other types of complex computations. Well, an NPU is what the AI components within Windows will use if it's present in the computer. So instead of
Mm.
offloading computations to the CPU or the GPU, it uses this NPU to do AI type computations. So it's like, okay, it looks like the driver version that you're using on your computer is this. The latest version is this. So based on what I'm seeing, the way that there's a known issue with the version of Windows you're running, the version of the driver for the NPU you're running, that causes this service in the background to trigger a stop code and make some memory dump and reboot your computer, update to this version or newer, and see if that resolves the issue. And I basically just clicked the link. It took me right to the Intel page. There was a driver, downloaded, installed it, rebooted the computer, and fingers crossed, it's been working ever since. So if this goes for like a day or two with no reboots, then I know the problem's resolved, because it was doing it multiple times a day for no rhyme or reason. Morning,
Really?
noon, afternoon, night, whatever. So being able to really fully describe from top to bottom what the issue or the problem is, or what you're trying to get information about, and then having it actually spit out a thoughtful response that takes
Hmm.
some prompt engineering. Have you worked
Absolutely.
with Notebook LM, by the way?
I have not. No.
I was showing Shane this morning. So I just went on vacation last week. I don't know if I told you that, but my first vacation in, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. It felt weird being away from the office for that
I'm
long, but
sure.
I downloaded a bunch of videos to watch on the plane ride there and the plane ride back. And one of them was a video about Notebook LM. And I'd heard about it, but I hadn't actually used it yet. So I would strongly encourage you to at least play around with it. It's more of like a research-based large language model. So what it will do is you can feed it resources like ChatGPT. ChatGPT looks all over the internet. So you
Right.
tell it, oh, I have this problem, or I have this question, or what should I do about this, or what should I do about that? And it's going to go out everywhere and grab all sorts of resources. Some you may agree with, some you may not. Some you may want it to use,
Uh-huh.
some you may not. But it's grabbing these resources from everywhere. Notebook LM, you feed it the resources. You say, these are like, case law articles, like, feed it like 5 or 10 case law articles, and then ask it like, hey, I have a client that's dealing with this kind of tax issue. Based on these articles for the following case law, how would you suggest approaching this
Hmm.
particular matter, or something along those lines? I'm trying to speak like an
Right.
attorney, but I'm not, but something like that, where you're feeding it, you're like, these are the resources I want you to use to then give me an answer for my question, instead of just randomly looking on the internet, finding it. So I fed it our website we're franchising SD Tech, which is the
Oh,
MSP
okay.
company that I own. We're franchising that. And so I gave it the franchising page, and it generated a podcast for me that I could send to somebody and say, oh, you want to learn about SD Tech franchising? Here's a 15-minute podcast you can listen to. And
Wow.
I'm not even kidding. Like, it sounds so real, like two people having a conversation on a podcast like you and I are right now about SD Tech franchising. And all I did was gave it our website. And based on everything
Really?
on the website, it generated this 15-minute podcast.
That is pretty cool. I would
Absolutely.
definitely check that out. That's awesome.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
that is
sure.
wow.
So
I'll
so
tell
what
you.
areas do you think, like, in your business, where do you think it would make sense to implement and or leverage AI?
I think for my business and just in the legal profession as a whole, more, and I think this will change over time, of course. For me right now, I feel like more the administrative roles, and I kind of look at it like using AI as a tool to handle some of the admin work to help us to be more efficient, but leaving the areas that require some professional judgment, leave that to the human professionals for now.
Yep.
Okay. And that's just kind of how I look at it. So, I think there are those nuances, especially if you're dealing with, even if it's a kind of a civil tax matter, but especially in criminal tax matters where, someone's liberty is on the line, I want to be the one making those decisions based on 20 years of practicing law, in a particular practice area. So that's kind of how I look at it. Now, specifically how to do that in terms of what specifically in terms of admin work I want it to do, I don't know. Because again, I really don't use it for my practice just because my practice is so narrow doing IRS tax resolution. I'm sure there's some areas, and I use software through a company. So I use, there's a company called Pitbull tax software. They have some AI capabilities that I don't use because, again, I just haven't needed it. But certainly something I'll look into kind of moving forward to see if it helps us be more efficient. But that's how I look at it. Can it help me be more efficient? But one of the issues, and I used to post about this, is I talk to a lot of attorneys, and I saw this sometimes in my own practice, where oftentimes using AI in the legal profession created more work because now you run it through the AI, but now someone has to take the time to go back through and see, what AI gave. Is it correct? Research that. And then now I'm spending even more time. And that's the feedback I was getting from a lot of attorneys is AI is causing us to be less efficient than more efficient in certain cases. And I'm sure there are exceptions to that, because I would get some feedback from other attorneys saying, hey, Robert, you don't know what you're talking about. We
Right.
use AI and it's been perfect for us. It's kind of like you said before, people start to take sides very quickly,
Yep.
as opposed to saying, hey, there can be some overlap here, guys. We're all just trying to figure this out. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or right or wrong. I'm just saying, based on my experiences and my experiences talking to other legal professionals, there are some issues, not to say that they can't be resolved or overcome, but just some things to be aware of. So, and as a matter of fact, it's funny that you mentioned the whole AI aspect of it in Chat GPT. For the first time last week, I sent some transcripts and some information to a client, and he ran it through Chat GPT. And he emailed me and said, hey, Robert, I hope you don't mind. I hope you're not offended. Just, what you sent me, I ran it through Chat GPT. I just wanted to see what it would say, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this with you. And I took a look at it. I was like, I appreciate it. Thanks. That was, kind of helpful for me to look and see what Chat GPT said about the information I had received from the IRS and sent to him. So, I'm not opposed to using it in practice. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it responsibly so that I'm
Yep.
not creating problems for myself or for my client.
Yep. I can tell you it can be a huge time saver. I mean, I don't know how long if I was still trying to resolve that reboot issue on my computer, I mean, how long would it take to go through and try to manually update every single driver
Yeah.
on my computer till I just happened to run across the one that fixed the problem, or
Right.
have ChatGPT kind of narrow down into it and say, "Hey, try this. This is likely the issue." But yeah, you can really cut out some of the legwork there. I know one of the things that we've got with our when I started the AI company, we partnered with kind of like you did with your tax stuff and the CPA company that was teaching attorneys how to do tax law and whatnot. We partnered. We know about AI because we're in the tech industry.
Right.
How to sell AI solutions to clients is not always
Mm.
like readily apparent. It's not our cup of tea right out of the box. But this group AI acquisition is able to help teach you how to like sell AI solutions to companies. Okay, you know what? I'd like to get a running start, and that's the best way to do. Sometimes it's worth spending time or spending money to save yourself time. And if
Right.
you can find someone
Yeah.
to coach you on how to do something that can help you make money, then that's probably a good use of both your money and your time. And so they have a platform that we've been using to do outreach to clients. And it's crazy because the time savings that it's able to do to book appointments, it's like sends out an email and you have to give it context. You have to train it, if you will, with
Right.
a Q&A kind of knowledge base of "Hey, if this Q&A, if this, then do that kind of thing. But it will work through the negotiations with the potential client to set up meetings, start to finish. And the next thing you know, you just start getting just meetings just start showing up on your calendar. And it's like, That's
Oh,
crazy that AI has gotten so sophisticated that it's doing stuff like that, and it's really changing every day, and just to see, since
yeah.
we've been involved with this since August, to see the different major iterations of the life cycle of this system that's able to do that. First, it was using an outside product called Instantly. I don't know if you've heard of Instantly before.
Mm, mm-mm.
It's an
Have
automated
not.
kinda outreach platform that you can use. So it was integrating with Instantly previously, then they kinda put Instantly behind the scenes, and so you use their web front end, and it's still orchestrating with Instantly, but you're not logging into Instantly every day, so kinda put like a curtain in front of it, and
Hmm.
now they integrated all of that Instantly functionality directly in the platform, as well as upgrading the AI SDR that does the communication back and forth with the client, so it does exception handling, I guess you could say, better than
Mm,
it did before. So if the potential client asks a weird question that would normally throw it off previously, and it'd have to say, it'd flag it for escalation, like, okay, now human needs to step in because I've
right.
reached my capabilities. So it's crazy to see, we're seeing things that would have taken years happen in
Sure.
months, and it's just unreal the amount of growth. Where do you see it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
That is a great question, Wes. And I honestly do not know because, like you just said, it's changing so rapidly. And that's part of something. I mean, just a few months ago, like we were talking about, August, September last year, I was posting online about this. From then to now, so I mean, we're talking what, 5 months, something like that. So much has changed in terms of the capabilities, the knowledge base. You're talking 2 to 3 years from now. I guess an ongoing conversation in the legal profession, like, what is the role of AI? Is the role of AI to replace lawyers, or is it to, make lawyers better lawyers? Ideally, I hope it's the latter. I hope it helps us. And that's why I say I'm a proponent of AI in as much as I would like to see it help lawyers be better at the practice of law. Okay.
Right.
Not replace lawyers. And I guess there may be some areas where it can replace certain attorneys and, other professionals. But 2 to 3 years from now, I just hope I still, well, I don't know if I still hope I still have a job because I want to retire at some point. But I'm hoping that it does that. It's at the point to where it really helps us be better lawyers. But that also, I think, depends on the lawyer and how we use it. Like
Yep.
you were talking about the prompting. I mean, it's a tool, and like any tool, you got to know how to use it properly. You kind of get out what you put in. So and I think that's
Yeah.
another part of it is now I haven't seen this personally, but I've heard of it like in certain law schools now where they're teaching like AI prompting for law. How to use it effectively in your practice, which is something that I don't think was there a few years ago. So I think as we learn, in my profession as attorneys, as we learn how to use it properly and effectively, I think it can do tremendous things in our practice, even in a tax resolution practice. I just hope that's the focus, though, is that how do we take this and implement it so that it helps lawyers be better lawyers, and the focus is not replacing lawyers with technology.
Yep. I think, like you were mentioning earlier, having it do more of the remedial work, like the administrative and things like that, but the decision making and higher thinking, if you will, because law is very nuanced. Like, you guys have to read case
Right.
law and have to understand the case law and then have to apply that case law. That's not easy. And I know it's one of the hardest things about all the years I've been in the business is getting that tribal knowledge, if you will, in my brain dumping that to to my employees so they know
Yeah.
how to better solve problems without me having to intervene. And that's been one of my bigger challenges in our business, because I have so much experience. It's not like I can just, like, this little situation this morning with my computer, like, all the
Uh-huh.
years, 30-ish years of experience in working with computers and troubleshooting, I knew on the surface it had something to do with either an application causing the memory dump, or likely a driver, because that's typically what causes memory dumps. I don't know which one. There's
Right.
like hundreds of
Right.
devices in the computer that all require drivers. It could be any of them.
Right.
Having something be able to narrow in on, yeah, I'm with 90% certainty saying it's this particular one. Oh yeah, that's an easy fix.
Right.
And then take it from there. So having it make things more efficient. I could have wasted half my morning dealing with that. And instead, I feel like it's resolved at this point. So it can be a powerful tool if you use it right. And then
Definitely.
knowing which large language model to use, whether using Claude or Chat GPT or Grok or Notebook LM, and they all have different use cases, if you will, and some are
Exactly.
stronger at, like Claude's really good at coding, ChatGPT maybe not so much, although I use ChatGPT all the time for scripting and things like that, and it works really well. But again, the results you get are directly tied to how well you prompt it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And I've talked to, when I was doing the LinkedIn posting, had the opportunity to talk to a lot of, not a lot, but quite a few legal tech founders. Some of them who are doing really wonderful things, really just trying to, like you said, how do we really implement this in the legal profession responsibly and have it do what we need it to do? And so I've been able to have some conversations with some founders who are really doing some really good stuff, towards that end. So I think going back to your question, 2 to 3 years from now, hopefully things are dialed in, but I mean, since that's always changing, I don't know how that's going to work out ultimately over time, but I'm encouraged by it. And again, not opposed to it. And anything that makes our profession helps us be better lawyers, be more efficient, better, even in terms of our judgment and, just handling cases on behalf of our clients. Of course, I'm all for that.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, if we have, hopefully our listeners enjoyed hearing you talk about tax law and how you can help people if they wanted to reach out to you and find out more information or get in contact with you, how would they do that?
If you're contacting me regarding a tax law issue, best way is through my email at work, rforte at Forte Tax Law. That's Forte, Forte. So rforte at Forte Tax Law. If you're interested in any of my posts or thoughts about legal tech and AI, you can reach me on LinkedIn at Robert Forte Jr.
Enjoying the conversation on the viral post?
Yeah, I got to start posting again. I haven't posted in about a month, but I'm posting this week. I'm getting back into it.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Well, Robert, I really appreciate your time today. It was great catching up. We haven't talked in a while,
Likewise.
so I really appreciate everything you've done for us, and thank you for joining today. It was great having you on the show, and hopefully, in maybe like 6 months or so, as things continue to advance with AI, you and I can circle back and have another conversation.
That would be fantastic, Wes. Good catching up with you as well. And thank you for the invite, man. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. I appreciate that. You too.